whether we should do that or not. It does seem like a wasted thing to do, at least for here. If you're somewhere else where it actually matters, that might be an interesting argument to get into. Daylight savings. Let's save some daylight. Well, I have news for people. If they move to Alaska, they're not going to have that daylight to save. It's gone. But one of the most significant, let's see, the easiest way to do this, I could just look for it, right? It's either phenomenology of spirit or, so LibCom, is that, let's see, Encyclopedia, Goodreads, Selected Works. Okay, this is the Miller translation, so that should be good. I think the Miller translation is the best. And it definitely looks like it's opening the entire book. That's it. Okay. So, what's the easiest way, though, to get to... I want to get to the section on consciousness. Is there an easy way to go to... I could go... let's go like this. Nope, that's not it. There we go. Well, that's not going to help. Did it move? Nope. Shoot. Oh shoot, I'd love to. I'm in the section. This is the section. It's just... Okay, see, self-consciousness, that's it. I want to get back a little bit further. This will be worth it, even if it's taking me a long time to get to it. It's kind of interesting. People don't get Hegel for some reason. I'm lucky because I had a teacher that... Okay, so here we go. So, yeah, I had a teacher named Dr. Ayukas, whose English was the fifth language that he learned. He was from Lithuania, and he went to Poland, where he studied and became a Roman Catholic priest. And then from there, after he graduated, he went to Germany, where he was studying advanced degrees and things. And then a thing called Hitler arrived, and Rayukas, Stanley Rayukas, was not Jewish, but he was concerned, especially as a Roman Catholic priest, that he might end up in trouble. So he fled himself to Switzerland. And I remember him saying to us that Germany was prepared for prisoners, but Switzerland wasn't prepared for refugees. So it's almost like he thought he would have actually might have been better off staying in Germany. But after World War II, he came to the United States, where he went to NYU, got his PhD in philosophy, no longer a Roman Catholic priest, obviously, and married the librarian. And they moved to Maryland, where they lived for a while. But then, because of the benefits at my alma mater, where they they got a retirement benefit. They moved there, and so I had the good fortune of having this European who really understood this time period much better than an awful lot of people that I've come to know. And so he was my teacher, and I remember, afterwards thinking, how would I structure this course, and coming to realize that actually I was following his notes. This what I've been trying to do is really follow his notes, and it's really a very Hegelian point of view, the whole course, because I'm looking at kind of progress, thought progressing, and what are we looking at? Well, thought is our phenomena, it's our consciousness. But in this particular part of the book, I think it demonstrates that Hegel's philosophy writing is very different than his predecessors, who describe this is the way things are. And this is how it's structured, and this is, et cetera, et cetera. This is almost like an action novel. Because what's going on for the Romantic philosophers, and Hegel's one of them, even though he's against Romanticism, so it's just hilarious, actually. He's describing the process. And this is just an example of this kind of process. So what's he describing? Well, by now we know in this book that that's the phenomenology of spirit, or in German it's Phenomenologie des Geists. So literally ghosts, like we say, but in German that means spirit or mind, you can say der Heilige Geist, which is the Holy Ghost. But you would say if somebody is acting crazy, running for president, saying stupid things, you say, hat alle gute Geistern verlassen. He's lost his mind, right? Or her mind. I don't want to take sides. I don't want to take sides here. Let me use fellatio on the microphone. I'm sorry. It's just... Oh well. What can I say? So, phenomenology of spirit. So he starts off and he talks about when you're an infant. An infant doesn't really seem to have consciousness. Maybe it does. But what it I guess it has consciousness, but what it's aware of, are limited things, right? He does talk about when it hits a particular point we think of as the terrible twos, where now all of a sudden this child can think of negation. The mom says, "Come here," and he goes, "No." It's not like no is even in his interest. That's just he's discovered he can say no. He can imagine the opposite. And just think of it. That's such a unique person's capability. I mean, an individual that can do that is on their way to becoming a person, right? But then we hit a particular point where self-consciousness arrives. And so this is where he describes what happens when that kind of child reaches the point now where what we call the mirror effect, right? You can see the mirror, and you see that's you in the mirror, and you know it's you, and we know that you've passed the mirror test because you're checking your ear, or you're wondering about why there's a mark on your head. Some people do tests like of primates and things, and they see the mark on they're like, wow, where did that come from, right? So they know it's them in the mirror. So you've reached that stage. And so what happens that enables you to have self-consciousness? And what Hegel argues is in the phenomena of our consciousness, we now have a conception of ourself. And so we're actually a subjective side that's having experience, and part of my experience is thinking, there's me. So there's what he calls a for itself. There's a self that's for me, that I'm that. I'm that thing in the mirror. That's me, right? So there's a in itself, which is having the experience, and the for itself, which is me in the mirror, or me thinking about someone else, right? If I'm thinking about how boring could this be to you sitting there, I'm trying to imagine because I know you're a self-consciousness too. And so what I'm trying to think is, what are you thinking? So I step outside of myself and try to imagine that I can imagine what you are thinking. Well, let me play this out. This is what I think he's trying to describe in this very kind of fluid example, right? Self-consciousness exists in and for itself, right? When and by the fact that it so exists for another. That is, it exists only in being acknowledged. This is, the French refer to this as le regard. We can talk about the male gaze, for example, and that's, all that kind of thing. We're very conscious of being recognized by others. And that's, I love saying that I am, as I see others, see me. So if I build up my whole self-esteem and my understanding of who I am and whether I'm any good at something or not by the way people react to how I do all those things, right? So I am as I see others see me. My self-identity is dependent on my social network of peers, my significant others. They're significant because without them seeing me the way they do and reacting to me, I wouldn't have that self-identity. I'm dependent on that in a relationship with other people. And it exists not only in the discussion that we have with one another, but also in my own mind as I think about those things that, boy, I said this. Should I have said that? Maybe I shouldn't have said doing fellatio with a microscope. Not a microscope, a microphone, right? And plus it makes it sound like I'm an anti-Trump because his character is so schlecht. Sorry, it's a German word for terrible. But you get the idea. Self-consciousness exists in and for itself when and by the fact that it so exists for another. That is, it exists only in being acknowledged. The notion of this, its unity in its duplication, because I'm all of that stuff, right? I'm all of that. Embraces many and varied meanings. Its moments then must on the one hand be held strictly apart, because I'm analyzing how do I think about this person. And on the other hand, must in this differentiation at the same time also be taken and known as not distinct, because all of this is me. This is all within my mind, right? Or in their opposite significance. The twofold significance of the distinct moments has in the nature of self-consciousness to be infinite, or indirectly the opposite of the determinateness in which it is posited. Part of that I think of is, when you're in a bathroom that has mirrors on both sides and you can look at and you see yourself infinitely reflected. In a way, I certainly can do that to myself. I can think about myself. I can think about myself thinking about myself. I can think about myself. How many personalities do I have? Do I have a different personality in different languages? I just read an article about that. So I'm like, of course, Kadaya Gavariu Porutsky. I speak a little deeper because otherwise you're a Goluboy, which is not a good Russian, Извините, пожалуйста, not a Gavariu. Sorry, that's a squirrel. Okay. So the nature of self-consciousness to be infinite, or directly the opposite of the determinateness in which it is positive. think of yourself as a self. You know, what's he like? I could describe him. No, that never works for anybody because we're all infinite. We're constantly able to be different. The detailed exposition of the notion of this spiritual unity in its duplication will present us with the process of recognition. How I recognize you, how I recognize myself, how I recognize the class, how I recognize the assembly, how I recognize the United States. They're all selves in this way of thinking, right? Self-consciousness is faced by another self-consciousness. It has come out of itself. I said, oh, I'm no longer thinking about me. I'm thinking about what I imagine you to be thinking. I've come out of myself now, and I'm trying to imagine being in the other person, right? This has twofold significance. First, it has lost itself, because I'm not thinking about me anymore, for it finds itself as another being. Secondly, in doing so, it has superseded the other, because my imagination about what you're thinking isn't really you. It's my imagination thinking what you might be thinking, right? So I'm not succeeding in either case here, because I'm losing myself and I'm not really grasping the other, right? So it's lost itself, for it finds itself as another being. Secondly, in doing so, it has superseded the other, for it does not see the other as an essential being, but in the other sees its own self. Because my imagination about what you're thinking is actually my thinking you're thinking that.
Will you read that last part one more time?
For it does not see the other as an essential being. Try to get the mouse here. But in the other sees its own self. As I'm imagining what you're thinking, I'm actually